Hi everyone, welcome to Quick Chapter 3. Quick Chapter 3 looks at how do we decide what is good for society. As usual, just a very quick heads up, this is really just a summary. You still need to read your teacher's notes. So essentially, how do we decide what is good for society? Firstly, we need to understand that when a government decides on what laws, strategies, policies to implement, they will need to understand challenges first. So let's cover the first challenge. The first challenge is differing needs and interests. Everyone essentially have survival needs, water, food, and shelter. But when it comes to well-being related needs, this is where it varying among individuals. Because for example, a poor person will say that he needs a job because it will provide him with money. But if a person is already rich in the first place, then he would not see a job as a need because he thinks that he can get his money through other needs. For interests are things that are directly or indirectly related to the fulfillment of needs. So if I need a job, I'm interested in buying a motorcycle or a car so that I can travel to my workplace easily. But the thing is, another person's interest can be another person's need. So if let's say you are a senior citizen that is really healthy and active, you may be interested in exercising. If you are free, you do it. If you're not, it's fine. But if you are a sick senior citizen who has been instructed by a doctor to keep fit, then you need to exercise every day. It's not a case of whether you have time, whether you have friends, you need to do it. Now, this is where the tension is because in a diverse society, everyone will have different needs and interests, and sometimes it's hard to see eye to eye on what is considered good for society. Now, the government will now have this very tough dilemma on thinking about whose needs and interests are more pressing because the government has the responsibility of looking after all the citizens and not just some individuals. The second challenge is how everyone will have differing priorities. What is important to you may not be important to someone else, which will affect decision making. Because at the end of the day, we are making decisions with limited resources, which means that we will win some and lose some. We are always in a situation where we need to choose between two things that we cannot have at the same time. Because at the end of the day, we all have limited resources. And everyone in a group, in a society, will have different needs and priorities. So, for example, an elderly would insist that they want more hospitals and elder cares because of their age. And then they will say that, oh, because I'm a senior in the country, my needs are more important. You should listen to me. But now, on the flip side, someone will say like, but I'm a parent with a young kid. I have a child, so I need to send my child to a school like childcare. After all, my kid is the future of the country. So this is where we have a tug of war because everyone would want to prioritize their concern at that point of time. So if the government listens to the elderly, they end up just pushing the parent with young kid away. If the government turns and listens to the parent with the young kid, the elderly will say that, oh, the government has abandoned me. So this is where it's really very tough for the government. Which is why at the end of the day, no matter which route or which policy that the government decides to roll out, there will always be unequal sharing of costs. A decision that can benefit a society in general can have negative impact on a small group of people. An example is the building of an expressway. An expressway is generally considered to be good of a country because it is a an expressway is one more additional way for you to travel to a certain destination in a country. So the pros is that it actually contributes to efficient transportation. But the cons is that residents living near expressways will be suffering from noise pollution. At the same time, citizens who don't drive will say that, why use my taxpayers' money to build something that I don't benefit from? I don't drive, that's not fair for me. I do not benefit from this at all. So this is an example of an unequal sharing of costs, which might end up to some people being a bit more invested in their interests, maybe showcasing some selfish traits, which unfortunately can lead to not in my backyard syndrome, or in short, NIMBY. So what is NIMBY? NIMBY is a situation where a person objects to building something that is actually good but they don't really like it because it's near their neighborhood. But if it's built somewhere else, they're okay with it. So an example is a 2008 Serangoon Gardens petition where residents in an upper middle class neighborhood, or in Singaporean terms, an atas neighborhood, right, was unhappy that the government wanted to build housing of foreign workers next to their home. So initially, their argument was like, oh, it's good to have additional housing for all these foreign workers, but it'll be very overcrowded in the area. When I want to drive out to work, their buses, their lorries will be also bringing them, fetching them to, and sending them to work. This leads to congestion. There's a lot of traffic. This will affect our transport to work. But as the debate progressed, it started to be rather classist or even judging. So it started to say like, oh, this is a very atas neighborhood. So if we have foreign workers in the area, then it will kind of affect like the aura of the place. It will affect the aura points of the neighborhood. There's all this alien presence of foreign workers. So unfortunately, the Serangoon Gardens petition is an example of a NIMBY syndrome. They want housing for foreign workers, but as long as it's not near them, because they think that oh, it will affect my housing price, the environment of the area, how atas this place is. So when needs of some groups of people are not met, this leads to unhappiness and tension will arise. So what now? What does the government need to do? So the government will then need to manage trade-offs. So the trade-off is essentially understanding that you cannot have your cake and eat it too. You can only decide on one. If you choose one, it means less of another. So an example is the building of the Cross Island Line. Now, Cross Island Line is essentially a dilemma for the government because, you see, if you build the Cross Island Line, it will serve to be a great economical advantage and it will increase efficiency because it links major hubs and it can serve up to 1 million commuters in long term. So this can actually lead to economic growth. But the disadvantage is that this will actually cut through the central catchment nature reserve, affecting our flora and fauna and increase soil erosion risk. So this is where the government is essentially like the meme we see here, right? They have to decide, do I choose economic developments or do I choose the natural habitats? Which is more important? What is the trade-off here? Or which one am I willing to trade off? Or could there be a possibility where I try to get both at the same time? And this is what the government tried to do. After considering various factors, talking to different stakeholders, doing multiple impact assessments, which the cons here is that they have to spend extra money, right? They decided that it's really the best way to just cut through the reserve. So we have a direct line. The Cross Island Line will be built directly just cutting through the reserve. But I will ensure that I have mitigation measures to minimize the environmental impact. So I will try to have my cake and eat it too. So how will this look like? I will still cut through nature reserve, but I make sure that I cut it in a way that it does not impact the flora and fauna so much. So they did the research and they realized that okay, 70 meters below ground is the best way to do it. So essentially this is like the height of a 25-story HDB block. But this is a very interesting situation where in the government trying to pursue both at the same time, it actually worked to their benefit because they realized that they can actually save $2 billion and it's less expensive to construct. So this is a very interesting example in the sense where the government tried to manage trade-offs, tried to get both at the same time, and they were able to find a solution and it did work to their benefit. Okay, so I would like to pause here and just do a recap of what we covered so far. How do the government decide what is good for society, or how do we decide what is good? This is where we need to first understand the challenges in deciding what is good for society. Now that we are pretty much aware of the challenges in deciding the best policy or the best strategy for the country, this is where the government will need to manage trade-offs. I cannot make everyone happy. So what is the one thing I guess for that better word, the lesser of the evil that I can give up on for the sake of everyone's future or everyone's happiness? But at the same time, in this whole thought process, we need to ensure that the government goes through this whole dilemma of decision making while being grounded by the principles shaping governance. So these are the principles shaping governance. Let's think of it as SLAM, SLAM. S is take for everyone, opportunities for all, where essentially we give citizens a say in decision making. So they give feedback, the government ideally or hopefully listens and make the necessary changes in the country, in strategies, in policies based on citizens' feedback. So an example that this can be achieved is through Meet the MP session, which is a platform for citizens to meet their MPs, voice concerns, feedback, give suggestions. Now that the government has listened to the voices on the ground, they will then bring it to Parliament or relevant agencies so that these people can do the necessary follow-ups. So this is supposed to show the citizens that the government is listening, they are implementing and tweaking strategies and policies according to what the citizen really wants. So hopefully this will strengthen their sense of ownership and belonging and foster trust between government and people. Second is L, leadership. This is where we need to have good leaders that consider both short-term needs and long-term goals of the nation, because at the end of the day, whatever they do will actually affect the welfare of everyone in the country. So they need to be capable and responsible, because at the end of the day, when we vote for someone to lead the country, we want them to take care of us and our people. So obviously we want to see that they have the capabilities to do so, because if I am not confident in them, if I don't trust them, then I would not have voted for them in the first place. So I would want to have a good leader that implements policies that benefit the country. I would also want my leader to have integrity, because if I have a corrupt leader, why would then other members of the parliament be honest and do their job well if the main leader does not lead by example in itself? Because at the end of the day, a strong leadership helps a country remain stable during difficult times. It also attracts investors, because once outsiders see that, okay, this country's government, their staff, their leader is capable, they are more attracted to set up businesses in our country and are willing to invest in our country, and this leads to economic growth. So this is why having good leadership is super important. Third is anticipating change and staying relevant. This is where the government needs to kind of see any potential issues that may happen in the future and try to implement strategies that will mitigate this, so to ensure that things don't escalate too much. So you can take some actions early, you can minimize threats, and this will allow you to maximize opportunities for your citizens. So an example is how in Singapore, floods are a common occurrence because of the fact that we are in a tropical climate. So this image that we see here is quite a common thing. If Singapore keeps experiencing flash floods, it would be especially problematic, because this will disrupt traffic, this will damage buildings, and because Singapore is a global financial and trade hub, this can affect our commerce, transport, and tourism, because operations cannot run as per usual. And if our roads, MRT system, and public facilities kept getting destroyed because of floods, we have to keep repairing. And this means that we have to keep using our money to repair it, right? This means that we have lesser money for other things that we can potentially use to improve the country. So this is why we cannot be just accepting of, oh, we always have flash floods. That cannot be the case. So what did the government do? The government has invested billions to enhance drainage infrastructure. The PUB members went down, investigate areas where flash floods constantly occur. They widen and deepen drains and canals, install flood barriers. They also started to use AI to predict and respond to floods. They start to use technology to anticipate flash flooding. Last is meritocracy. Meritocracy is a system that distributes opportunities and rewards according to merit. So the idea is, no matter who you are, no matter your background, you are awarded if you put in the effort. So an examples that you guys will be able to relate to is Eagles and EduSave scholarship. This is granted to everyone, regardless of your race or your background. If you are deserving of it, you will be able to get this scholarships or bursaries. So let's just do a final recap of chapter 3. When we try to decide what is good for society, we need to understand the challenges that come with it. Everyone have different needs and interests, different priorities. No matter how you try to create the best policy, there will always be unequal sharing of costs. So there will always be a point of tension. So with this in mind, with this understanding in mind, this is where the government will need to manage trade-offs. But at the end of the day, with all these challenges and trade-offs that the government will need to do, this is where the government needs to hold on to the principles of governance, which is essentially SLAM, stake for everyone, opportunities for all, having good leadership, anticipating change, and staying relevant, as well as meritocracy. So this is a summary of chapter 3. I hope this helps. I'm assuming that you're watching this video to revise for weighted assessment or exams. I hope that this enables you to revise the content that is necessary. Thank you.